Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, October the 11th, 2017, show number 1151. Thank you guys very much for joining me here live on this Wednesday evening, or if you're tuned in to the archive, thank you very much for joining me that way. However you choose to listen, thanks for joining us. As always, send us emails to onair@yourmaclife.com, yourmaclifeshow.com, or send me email to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. Either way, I'll get them. Doesn't matter. Both ways, I'll get them. For you folks who are watching via the Google Hangout, you're going to notice you won't see the graphics that you normally get. For some odd reason, Google Hangouts and Wirecast are no longer working well together, and the light has changed just literally since I sat down. Why is there so much light coming from there? Is that monitor? Oh, my goodness. I can't win. Let me just see if I can't do that. Does that change anything? Nope. How about a dark screen? There, a little better. Still settling in here in the new Your Mac Life headquarters. As you can see, we have the Your Mac Life letters and a French screen. The French screen won't be here the entire time. It's just a very pretty screen that Melissa has put up just to fill in the space. For those of you who are have had a couple questions, where am I now? If you're watching the archive, if you're watching the video, if you're watching YouTube, that's right. If you wanted to see the graphics of the show, YouTube is showing the graphics properly. And so for those folks who are familiar with the area, down here is Vancouver, British Columbia on the Google Maps. And we live in this little tiny town called Gibsons. Very cute little small town. Very, very small town. And it's strange. It's country living. More so than any place I've ever been except for Dad's farm back home in Nova Scotia. On Wednesday. On Monday, I look out the window, and there's a raccoon walking across the porch. Okay, first of all, I thought raccoons were nocturnal animals, or as Wayne said in the IRC chat room, diurnal animals. So is it unusual for raccoons to walk around during the daytime? Regardless, it's still kind of freaky for the city kid to be seeing raccoons wandering around in the daytime. And then, like a half hour later, I look across, and in the lawn are two deer sunning themselves. Like, just sitting there. It's like deer. Great big deer ears. And it was weird. I think if they knew how tasty I thought they were, they wouldn't hang around. But that's the question: is hunting's allowed here? Why aren't they dead? So, and then I found out that the big pile of poo in the yard was bear poo. So raccoons, deer, and bear apparently make their home within a very close distance to where I live. Very strange. Very, very strange. By the way, happy Thanksgiving to all my Canadian friends. Sly, hope you and your mom and everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I gotta admit something. I made my very first Thanksgiving turkey this past Sunday. And I'm glad she's not listening, because my mom would kick my ass if I said this. Cooking a turkey was easy. Don't tell anybody, but it was really, really easy. I was surprised how easy it was. For some reason, I thought turkey was a difficult thing to make, because my mom made a huge fuss every Thanksgiving and Christmas over the turkey. It was simple. And yes, it was not only MacMan. Was it edible? It's quite edible. It was delicious. It was moist and tasty. It was good. I mean, am I doing something wrong? I made good it was just take the turkey, unwrap it, scoop the guts out, the giblets and the neck and all that kind of stuff. Melissa made stuffing, so we put the stuffing in, put the turkey in the big roasting pan, put it in the oven. And it was what? It's 15 minutes for every pound of turkey. So 3.5 hours later, took it out, basted it every 45 minutes. Cut it, chopped it up. I didn't carve it. Does anyone did anyone in your family carve the turkey, like properly carve it? I just hacked off pieces of it until we had enough to eat. But it was really good. Surprisingly good. And I made roast veggies, roast beets, and roast sweet potatoes, and roast carrots, and roast Brussels sprouts. But Lauren Finkelstein, the official YML Jew, I will apologize to you right now. You've always told me I should try roast beets, and I was always roast Brussels sprouts, and I hate Brussels sprouts. But I decided to try roasted Brussels sprouts. Oh my God, they were so good. They were so good. You cut off the end bits. You cut them in half. You put them in a bowl, little olive oil, salt, pepper, thyme, Italian seasoning, and the secret ingredient, a little bit of sugar. Put them in a cookie sheet, cut side down for 20 minutes. Mwah! Perfection. Delicious. So good. I didn't make enough. Melissa made mashed sweet potatoes with, and this is the weird part, marshmallows. And I didn't think it was going to be any good at all. I thought for sure that was going to be disgusting. She mashed up the sweet potatoes, cooked the sweet potatoes, mashed them up, and then put a layer of marshmallows over top, little mini marshmallows, put them in the oven, broiled them for 3 or 4 minutes, came out all, caramelized on top, like as if they were in a campfire. You let them cool, and you've got this delicious, gooey sweet potato marshmallow mess. It was delicious. Had pumpkin pie, because pumpkin pie is mandatory. And I made my mock apple pie. I love making my mock apple. I prefer apple pie. A good apple pie is sublime. But the mock apple pie is fun just to give it to people and have them eat it and go, this is really good. And I'll tell them, you know what the secret is? And they say, what? And I say, there's no apples in it. And they're going, what? Nobody believes that my mock apple pie has no apples in it because it tastes like apple pie. Everyone said it tasted like apple pie. The secret ingredient? Ritz crackers. I know. It sounds weird and insane, but the secret ingredient to my mock apple pie is Ritz crackers. Makes no sense, but I'm telling you the truth. Yeah, Monty, if you want the recipe, it's easy to make, simple, easy to make. Send me an email, Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. We're going to talk about did you see the survey? 64% of Americans own at least one Apple product. I laughed and laughed and laughed. One? I have 7 within arm's reach from where I'm sitting right now. So one is just, you pull up your socks, folks. And we're also going to talk about, Tim Cook said in an interview that the technology doesn't exist yet for Apple to make good augmented reality glasses. Do you believe him? You think that's him zigging when he's zagging and just trying to throw off the competition? I don't think so. But we'll talk to Jim about that. Also, in our starting point photography segment, on last week's show, we talked about the things that you see that your camera can't or doesn't see very well. On this week's show, we're going to talk about things that your camera can see that you can't, and encourage you to take those kinds of shots that your camera can see but you can't. We'll talk about that. Also, want to say thanks very much to the nice folks at LowPro. LowPro were kind enough to sponsor the Starting Point photography segment for the last month, for the month of September, and a little bit longer. And on last week's show, we awarded to Forrest Jafuta and Dave Martin. They each won a camera bag for the nice folks at LowPro. Go to lowpro.com and find your perfect camera bag. like I said, emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. I also saw this Twitter. This is something that gets me, reminded me of it. The folks at Icon Factory have finally released their latest Twitter, or their Twitter client, Twitterific. They did a Kickstarter program for it, and it came out in version 1 on Monday, and I've been playing around with it for the last little while. And I was reminded of this quote from Allison Carter. Uninstalled Twitter for the weekend. It appears I mostly missed angry screaming into the void. That's so funny. Except, if your Twitter feed is angry screaming into the void, you're following the wrong people. We have to have this conversation constantly to remind people that Twitter is what you make of it. I'm just getting Melissa into Twitter, and she's not a huge user of it yet. She kind of likes it because she gets to track my rants and raves. But she's not following very many people, and that's fine for her. But Twitter is about your feed. It's about who you follow. If you find Twitter is full of angry people, it means you follow angry people. You can make a Twitter feed that's nothing but good news. That's nothing but cat pictures. That's nothing but happy, smiling things, if that's what you want your Twitter feed to be. Don't blame Twitter for being angry, screaming into the void. You chose those people to watch be angry and scream into the void. If there's people on Twitter that aren't acting in a way that you like, simply unfollow them. It's just that easy. You don't have to have your Twitter feed be full of angry people. Don't blame Twitter for that. That's on you. That's because that's the Twitter feed that you chose. And if I'm included in that list of the angry screaming to the void, unfollow me. You don't have to follow me. It's like I don't have to follow you. For me, my criteria on Twitter is, are you interesting? Do you write interesting things on Twitter? I take that back. Not are you interesting. Do you write interesting things on Twitter? You may very well be the most fascinating person in the world, but if I don't find what you write on Twitter to be interesting, I'm not going to follow you. I've, over the years, have had dozens and dozens of listeners say, why don't you follow me on Twitter? First of all, I may not know about you. So I'll say, what's your Twitter handle? And they give it to me, and I go to the front page of their Twitter feed, and I read that front page. If that front page isn't full of interesting things, I'm not going to follow you. I don't want my Twitter feed filled up full of people who aren't posting interesting things, good and bad. I mean, I don't mind angry screaming into the void because it's what I do on a regular basis. It's not everything I do, but it's something I do on a regular basis, certainly. But I always try to be interesting. That's the key for me. Monty says, if you find Twitter boring or maddening, then you're not following the right people. There are plenty of kittens and puppies to follow instead of constantly screaming. And Wayne says, people assume what they post is interesting to others because it's interesting to them. And that's completely true. Absolutely true. I think what I post on Twitter is interesting. It may not be to you. I'm okay with that. I've had people say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't follow you on Twitter. Okay. It makes no difference at all. My life is not changed for the better or worse because you do or don't follow me on Twitter. That's not an insult to you or an insult to me. It's just the way it is. So don't get bent out of shape if I don't follow you, and I won't get bent out of shape if you don't follow me. Seems fair. In our starting point photography segment later on the show, we're going to talk about what your camera sees that you can't see and how to capture those images. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about the news of the week. All that and much more coming up. This is your Mac Life.
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How are your Red Sox doing in the playoffs? All right, moving on. 64% of Americans own an Apple product, according to a CNBC All-America Economic Survey, up from 50% when the question was last asked 5 years ago. Are you surprised by this number? Jim? Jim?
Oh, there you are. You came back.
I came back. Well, I felt I had to. Did you hear my question?
So, how did the Red Sox do?
Oh, yeah. And I figured you were ignoring me.
Well, no, I was going to, but then you cut out, so.
So I ignored myself.
Yeah.
64% of Americans own an Apple product, according to CNBC All-America Economic Survey, up from 50% when the question was last asked 5 years ago. Did that number surprise you?
It did.
Why?
Well, because it's not just a product. It's all products. So, Apple's got some pretty deep penetration. That could be, they could own it, or they could own an Apple TV or an iPhone, or, it's everything. It's an Apple product. So that's pretty substantial.
The average American household reports owning 2.6 Apple products, and the wealthiest Americans own 4.7. I actually thought those numbers were low. I would have guessed those numbers would have been higher, actually.
Well, it's a lot of Apple's products when you consider, and I say this with the grain of salt that we all say it with, but they sometimes are expensive.
Yep.
So, take an Apple TV, one of the biggest bangs on it from reviews I've seen so far is that, well, there are cheaper options out there.
Yep.
Well, sure, there are always cheaper options out there, but are there better options?
Yeah.
And Macs are the same thing. I don't think there's a better option out there. But are there cheaper ones? Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Wayne makes a good point in the IRC chat room. People like Shawn, me, with 7 products skew it. I was saying earlier in the pre-show, I've got 7 within arm's reach right now, and that obviously skews the survey because I ain't one of the rich folks that can actually afford all these products. Some of them I have to steal. But one of the things is I think part of the problem, too, is the survey is only of 800 people. I think that might skew the survey results a little bit, too. The survey supposedly has a error percentage of plus or minus 3.5. So it may be lower than that or even possibly higher than that. I think.
Well, I mean, they compared it to a survey that was done 5 years ago with probably the same amount of people.
Yeah.
So, if one is skewed, they're both skewed, but maybe the end result is the same. But, you can make numbers say whatever you want.
Sure. Yeah, true. Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
But this one, 64% own an Apple product. That's, I don't know. No matter how you look at that, it's pretty significant. You were talking about Apple products. I'm standing outside right now, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 just here.
Outside under the bridge.
Yeah. If I went under the girder, then I could find even more.
I think one of the problems with the survey, though, is that, as the article said later on, as for usage, it is dominated by phone calls, emails, and texts, followed by social media. Few Americans say watching videos, playing games, and shopping are the main uses for their handhelds. That, to me, seems odd, that the usage is dominated by phone calls. That's not my experience. It's not the experience I find of most people I talk to about this stuff.
No, not mine either.
So that's what made me suspicious about the 800 number and whether these results were representative of the American population, because I think the vast majority of folks no longer use their cell phones primarily for phone calls. I think they do use it for other things, even if it's just social media and or music and or games.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that.
So
the way I communicate on my phone has changed drastically over the years.
Oh, absolutely. And it's primarily due to the iPhone, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, well, it's due to the way that we all communicate, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I text a lot more than what I make phone calls, whereas years ago, I always had, one of those Bluetooth headsets in my ear because I was always on the phone.
Yeah.
I was getting tennis elbow just from talking on the phone so much. But now I don't do that as much. I text and still email, but mostly if I want an immediate response, I'll text.
That brings up the question, though: is that a good thing? Is text less personal, impersonal?
Sure, it is
better than a phone call.
Well, it's the way it is.
Yeah.
There's no changing it really. But I mean, phone calls go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need a quick answer. You don't need to go over, somebody's whole day or week. Oh, it's been a week since I talked to you. Let me tell you what's going on. Yeah. Please don't.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is why I have so many connection issues, and I just hang up on people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Want me to call you back? No thanks.
No thanks. Yeah. And how many times have we gotten a phone call and looked at the screen and going, "Why are you calling me? Just text me." I don't want to talk to you, but I'll be happy to text with you.
Yeah, I don't get many phone calls anymore.
No, neither do I.
Well, that could be because I'm so rude when people call. That could be an issue too.
That's true. It's always been kind of funny that the stereotype is the gender stereotype is that men don't like talking on the phone, women do. In without wanting to get too chauvinistic, I wonder if that's still true. Yes, men still probably hate talking on the phone, but I wonder if women are talking less on the phone because of texting and social media and those kinds of things.
Well, I think it's probably different for work and pleasure. I mean, I love talking to my son on the phone.
Sure.
That's great. But for work stuff, I mean, if you're doing a business thing, and you're going to talk on the phone and you're going to meet in person and stuff like that. But very rarely, if I'm out somewhere, very rarely will I ever get a phone call.
Yeah.
But I will get lots of texts.
Yeah, true.
So I don't think it's a men woman thing. I think it's the way that things are right now, and there are men that probably enjoy talking on the phone if they're talking to their kids.
Yeah,
but if they're gonna text somebody, then they would, or they're gonna talk to somebody that they don't really need to talk to, then the text is fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the same for both men and women.
Monty says, I don't talk on my phone much, but if iMessage goes down, there will be riots in the streets.
Yeah, I hear that, Monty. Yeah,
it's
true.
It is. It's absolutely true. I mean, Facebook was down. Facebook was down for some reason this morning. I didn't notice, didn't care. But I feel the same
I
way about that when if Twitter, back in the days when Twitter used to have frequent outages, that was incredibly aggravating and annoying. And,
yeah.
and when you used to get the iMessage outages, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me.
Yeah. Well, I remember, when Twitter used to go down. I mean, and it was just like a national catastrophe because
That's
Twitter was
right.
down. And now you could take AT&T's whole network down for days and nobody would notice.
That's right.
You know, Twitter has a little stutter
Yeah.
and people are freaking out like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah, it's interesting how our needs and wants change over time. Tim Cook was interviewed in the Independent in the UK, and he made a very interesting comment. He said, Cook said that currently the technology itself does not exist to make augmented reality glasses in a quality way. And Apple won't ship an AR product unless it can deliver a great experience. Do you believe Cook, or do you think he's just trying to throw the competition off?
No, I think that the technology is probably there to do AR glasses, but not the way that Apple would want to do them. So if somebody comes out with AR glasses and says, "Yeah, Apple said they couldn't do it, but here they are,"
Yeah.
well, they're probably going to be big and ugly, and you know, Apple bet on AR, and they'll figure out a way to get it done. But as with most things, they they have ideas. Everybody has ideas, but if the technology is not there to put out the type of product that you want, then you're you're going to have to wait. That's all there is.
I have a theory that even if Apple did have that technology available in their skunkworks, they wouldn't have released it now anyway. I think Apple's modus operandi is slow instead to introduce things in incremental kind of ways.
Of course, that's what they always do.
I think this AR kit that they have released to allow other developers to build AR things, to get people used to what AR is their slow and steady way of getting average consumers. Yeah, nerds and geeks want AR glasses. That's the people who bought the Google Glass when it was available. The average person didn't know or even want that kind of thing. I think in 2 years, when AR on your phone has become much more usable and interesting to average consumers, that's when Apple will bring out glasses. And even then, I don't know if they would bring out glasses. I just get the sense that people don't want to wear glasses. I don't.
Well, I don't. I mean, but we're different, I think, than a lot of the other people. I
Yeah.
mean,
But do you think
you know,
the average person wants to wear even eyeglasses? I don't think the average person wants to put something on their face. You know
well,
what
it
I mean?
depends on what it's going to do. I
Yeah.
mean, is that going to be a mass market thing? Well, for a lot of people, it would be. Maybe for you and I, no.
I don't know. I just get the sense that people don't want to wear glasses in general, no matter what they did. They don't want to wear glasses that have corrective lenses so they can read. I mean, I'm as vain as anybody else, and I only need reading glasses, and even then, I don't put them on half the time. I don't want to wear glasses. That's why people go for LASIK surgery. So Apple coming out with glasses, even if they do augmented reality, they're going to do something really, really special to overcome that dislike of glasses. Now, that being said, they did the same thing with the Apple Watch. A lot of people didn't wear watches anymore, but Apple has made wearing a watch not necessarily a cool thing, but certainly something that people are now more willing to do.
Well, I haven't worn a watch since 2006.
Yeah.
So, and then all of a sudden I'm wearing a watch again.
Yeah.
So yeah, for a lot of people, that's true. But I think, with the watch, a lot of it comes down to how people are using it.
Yes.
Some people are using it for fitness. Some people are using it more for productivity. And by productivity, I mean, with your notifications and stuff like that. So is that people get to use this technology that benefits them.
Yes.
And if a technology can benefit look at the Apple Watch and say, I don't get it. I
Yeah.
don't get why I would use that because I can tell the time on my phone, you know? But
I lost Jim again.
did you, well,
Hello. We'll wait. I think Jim's standing too close to a girder. He has to walk away from the girder in order to be able to get the phone back. Jim? Jim? Oh, dear. Still waiting. Hang on, Jim. Oh, there you are. You're back.
hello,
Hello.
hello. I know me.
Sorry, what was that? Jim?
Hey,
Yep. Are
hey.
you wandering around under the bridge? Jim?
Hear me.
Are you back now? Okay, Jim, I'm going to call you back. Hanging up on Jim. And going to try again. Technology sucks sometimes.
Can you hear me, Shawn?
I can hear you now. That was annoying.
I don't know what that's
I
about.
don't know what that's about either. I'll edit that in post.
Okay.
What were you saying? What was the last thing you were
Don't
saying?
lie. You don't edit
I don't edit
anything.
anything.
That almost sounded professional there for a minute. You had me
No.
too.
I'm too lazy to edit, man. I just can't be
Yeah.
bothered.
Yeah.
The where was the article? The article was on theindependent.co.uk. I think Tim Cook has got a really interesting point where he kind of alludes to the fact that Apple's not doing their own AR stuff, but what they are doing is making it possible for others to do AR stuff. And I saw someone comment on Twitter that most AR stuff now is things that I'll just stop using after a couple of tries. Yeah, that's true now, but you've got to have at least enough imagination to see how AR can be very, very useful and very, very powerful in the future for any number of groups, not just gamers, not just vertical industries, but I love the tape measure apps I see on AR. I had to measure a room, and it's a giant pain in the ass to try to measure a room by yourself with a 16-foot tape measure, and you've got a 34-foot long room. But I need to know the square footage of the room. Well, these AR apps make that just dead simple to figure this stuff out. They'll do the math for you. You can put in doors. You can do everything that you need to do to find out the square footage of a room. That, to me, is incredibly useful, and yet it's a rudimentary thing in augmented reality. So if you can't see how augmented reality is going to move forward in the future, that yes, right now it may not be as compelling as you'd like, I don't think you have very much of an imagination.
Well, no, but I mean, if you look at what most people view as AR, because it's what we've been shown, it's games.
Yeah.
And when you look at games as, okay, AR is games, and that's what you start to associate it with, and you think, well, I don't need that.
Yeah, I don't play games.
I look at the keynote content, and I see games because it does make for a great demo.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
So but do I really care about AR games? No, not really. But I don't care about any kind of games,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
honest. So it doesn't really matter. But so I think that people's minds get stunted a bit because of that. Because when you say AR or augmented reality, they say, oh, that's where you can do the game thing. Like, no, not necessarily. But yeah, I think that's part of the problem right now, and that'll change. That'll change as more companies come on and more people start to do fascinating things with it.
I think the other issue too is that people. It's very funny. I don't know if this happens to other companies or whoever it is, but people seem to forget that Apple does this on a regular basis. This stuff at the beginning is going to be kind of boring, but when Apple enters the field full force, it really opens up the field. Yes, smartphones were boring before the iPhone. Smartwatches, if we had any, were boring before the Apple Watch. So you got to at least give Apple some credit for their past success and say, yes, Google Glass was a failure, but that doesn't mean that Apple is going to bring out a failure of Google Glass. Just by Apple entering the market, it jazzes up the industry.
Right. And it's going to be what they do in the future is going to be incredible. Yeah. Look at if you took the phone market in 2006 and said, yeah, Apple's going to release a phone and it'll probably be like the rocker and and it's going to be a phone. So what? It'll connect to iTunes. What can they possibly do
That's right.
with a phone?
That's right.
To change the market.
Nothing.
I mean, they won't. Nothing. Motorola, now there's a company that will change the market. But, and we could easily have said that, and people did say that. Even after it was released, CEOs of companies, BlackBerry, said that. So there are a lot of things that Apple can do in AR. Just because we don't understand it right now doesn't mean that they can't and won't do it.
That's right.
And there will be maybe minimal mass market appeal at first until things start to flesh out.
Yep.
And, the Apple Watch, I think, is a perfect example. People at the beginning said, why would I want to watch? I can tell time on my phone. That's so, right. But then they started to realize what the watch was able to do and the capabilities of it. And I've said before, the watch has changed the way I use my phone.
Sure, yeah.
So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I think that there's no doubt that a lot of people aren't giving Apple the benefit of the doubt when they absolutely should be, because if anyone can do this, it's going to be Apple. I think one of the things, for better or worse, that Apple's doing is Apple's looking at what developers are coming up with in ARKit and, quite honestly, looking to Sherlock a lot of those guys. I think in 2 years you'll see a tape measure, an AR tape measure built into your iPhone. I think a lot of these things, a lot of these early sort of baby steps in AR are going to be merged into Apple's OS, so that if you're trying to sell a measuring kit today, forget about it. It's don't bother, because Apple's going to absorb your technologies. I think they're looking at and borrowing from whatever folks are going to come up with over the next 2 years.
Well, and Apple has continued to do that, and they always will. Yep. But the measuring tape that you get in the AR or in the OS will be a minimal one.
Yep. And
developers can go ahead and make, great detailed, like PCalc does for calculators.
Yep, exactly.
So.
Moving on. This was an interesting story, if only because of the reaction to it. Dow Jones technical error spreads fake news story of Google acquiring Apple. This was a really weird story, if only because everyone believed it. The market shot Apple's stock price up by $2 inside of 15 minutes because somehow those idiots on Wall Street actually believed that Google had bought Apple for $9 billion, which is pocket change.
Yes. Yes.
That, to me, I think was the most disturbing aspect of the story. It was undoubtedly an internal mistake that some intern wrote a joke April Fool's type story or whatever it was, pushed the wrong button. But the fact that the outside world believed this story was, to me, mind-boggling.
Well, maybe $9 trillion.
Exactly. That's right.
But yeah, definitely not $9 billion.
It was bizarre, the reaction I saw in the financial media. That, like I said, the NASDAQ jumped because of this without anyone thinking about, wait a minute, that number is completely wrong.
Yeah, well, you can't expect them to think. They wanted to act.
Yeah, but these are the guys that are running the world economy. You'd hope they'd give at least half a second's worth of thought to go, wait a second, $9 billion. Apple's worth $800 billion.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus. That was the thing that made me go, oh, come on, you morons.
I don't think Google has enough money to buy.
there's no chance. Even if Apple wanted to get bought, which I guarantee you they don't, they certainly wouldn't sell to Google. Of all companies, Google couldn't even do a hostile takeover of Apple. There's no scenario where this story could have possibly made sense, which makes it all the more disturbing that Wall Street took this hook, line, and sinker and ran with it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
like you said, especially the numbers. Once you look at the numbers and say, wait, what?
Now, Dow Jones says this was a technical error. What do you think happened?
Oh, I think somebody messed with them.
You think someone posted a story without anyone at Dow Jones knowing about it?
Maybe.
Interesting. That's a possibility.
Because what kind of technical error could lead to that?
Yeah.
That would be like, you posted something that was just a moronic thing to do, and I went out and said, yeah, it was a technical error.
Yeah.
Sean's dumb.
Yeah.
That's the technical error.
Technically, he's an idiot.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, somebody actually had to have it in the system. Somebody actually had to push publish, and it had to show up.
Yep.
So I don't know how that falls under technical error.
That's right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it makes absolutely no sense knowing how the back end of these things work.
Yep.
And let's be honest, anybody on the internet right now knows how the back end of these systems work because you can post on WordPress or Medium or whatever. And those systems in Dow Jones may be more antiquated.
Yep.
And they probably take more presses than Medium does to publish.
Oh, absolutely. No kidding.
So there is no technical glitch that can make that happen.
I agree.
So that's my thought.
The most benign thing is thinking some intern wrote an April Fool's story and pushed the wrong button. Hacked, I think, goes to the other end of things. And MacMan says, I wonder if they got hacked and they don't want to admit it. I don't know if Dow Jones would take that chance, because if they got hacked, it's going to get found out at some point.
I was just going to say that, chances are, maybe we'll see in a month where Dow Jones says we've been hacked. And
yeah, but it's an awfully minor hack, don't you think?
Well, and maybe they're trying to figure out what happened so that they can say, no internal data was accessed. Yeah. And, but if I had done that, if I had done the hack, I'd be posting all kinds of stuff today.
Oh, exactly.
Apple buys Campbell's soup.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah,
and it's going to put an AR chip in every can.
That's right. Change his logo to Campbell's soup logo.
You know what I would do? I would get John Moltz to write like 100 stories and just keep posting them.
That's right. Over and over again.
Over and over.
No one writes funny like Moltz does. That's for sure.
No, that would be great.
Folks, we're talking to Jim Dalrymple the Loop.
Oh, wait.
What?
I want to tell you something.
Oh, tell me something.
You know what I hooked up today?
What did you hook up today?
Google Wi-Fi.
What?
The mesh network.
Really?
Yep.
Now, why, first of all? Why did you feel you needed a mesh network under the bridge?
because the bridge spans a long distance. So if
Okay.
I run, if it sometimes for fun, we run through traffic, and if I run to the other side of the bridge, my network was, it wasn't there.
Okay.
And I have an umbrella. It has holes in it, but I have an umbrella on the other side of the bridge. And if I wanted to stay there for a little bit,
Yeah.
and because that's like Hawaii.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah,
It's nice over there.
it is nice over
Okay.
there
Good.
sometimes. I mean,
So hang on. So why a mesh network and not just a Wi-Fi extender?
okay. So I've been doing a lot of reading about mesh networks
Okay.
and Wi-Fi extenders and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So a Wi-Fi extender will broaden your network,
Yes.
but the speeds from the extender are actually lower than what they are if you're standing right beside the router.
Which is fair. Makes sense.
With a mesh network, they're the same everywhere. Yeah.
So it's like having multiple routers around your bridge.
Right. So I had two one Apple time capsule, one Apple, the tall one. But anyway, they weren't working. My connection speed inside, right beside the router, is about 290. But when I go out into the backyard, the connection speed is about 30, 40.
Are you talking download speeds? Download speeds?
Download speeds,
Okay.
about 30.
Okay.
Upload speeds are capped at 30,
Okay.
but download speed would be about 30, 40.
That's pretty damn good.
Okay, but it's 300 inside.
Holy crap!
Yeah. So this started to really kind of get to me, and I tried to figure out ways around it without spending a ton of money.
Yeah.
Because who has a ton of money to spend on that? So I looked at extenders, because extenders are pretty cheap, and that's the problem that I found with extenders was the Wi-Fi speed that you'll be able to get Wi-Fi, but it's going to be diminished speed. Well, I didn't want that.
Yeah.
So I looked at these mesh networks, and there's a few companies that have mesh networks. I finally decided on Google, and I want to tell you my speed in the same spot, the same tests, tripled. So outside, now I'm getting, they more than tripled, probably quadrupled, because now I'm getting about 140 outside, whereas before I was getting about 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wayne says now, except all your internet is through Google. Is that true?
No.
Google is just selling you basically routers. They're not rerouting your domain name or your IP
You're correct.
or anything else like that. Yeah, it's just you're still using whatever your ISP is, and you're using it.
And it's just Google hardware.
Yeah, that's right.
So they created now in my place. I have this mesh network where the speed at the far end of it is still now. It's still not the 300 that I get inside, but it's 140. So at 140, I'll take that.
But why do you need those kinds of speeds, though? I mean, 300, even 300 indoors is insane.
Porn.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
You shouldn't have asked that question.
I know. I'm sorry. I set myself up on that one.
No, I mean, sometimes even with the high speeds outside, the network was so volatile that it was hard to stream TV on an Apple TV outside, because all of a sudden the network would just plummet and drop, and the Apple TV would just basically shut down and say, yeah, you don't have a connection. Well, I do. You just can't get it.
Yeah.
But tonight, I will sit and watch the Boston Bruins in about 10 minutes on an Apple TV and not have that problem.
Now, you said this wasn't hugely expensive. I'm looking at Amazon.ca, and the Google Wi-Fi system set of 3 is $265. Can you give us a ballpark of what you paid for it down in the States?
About that.
In US. So you think it's a reasonable?
Okay, do a search for Eros. They're 500.
Really? Oh, I didn't realize they were that
Oh
expensive.
yeah, yeah. So if you look at some of the competition, and for me, this is where, as a regular consumer, where price sensitivity really came into play.
Yeah.
And I talked to a friend of mine who has a Google network set up, and he highly recommended it. He said, I've never seen anything like it, because your internet speeds at far reaches of the house and property will go up drastically.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe him, but it's true. It's true. And to set it up was so easy. Mm-hmm. You open up the Google app and scan the QR code, and it does everything for you. Then when you add another point, you do the same thing. It sets it up, and it says on the screen, setting up the mesh network. Mm-hmm. And it set it up and said, do you want to add another one? Yes, I do. Set that one up. And then it tests it all for you. Yeah. Now, according to the Google app, because it's taking the speed from the one that's actually plugged into the router. Yeah. Now, keep in mind, these other ones are not plugged into anything except the wall for power.
Yeah.
So there's only one that's plugged into the router. Okay. And the one that's plugged into the router, Google said that the speed was 288. Now, that's when I was outside testing it through the app.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because we're having that very exact same problem here in the new place here in Gibson's, that from one end of the house to the other, it drops on a regular basis, and we get relatively slow speeds the other end of the house with the router in this end with all this. So I've been looking at the same sort of things. And one of the issues that people have had with mesh networks is very much like the original Wi-Fi that Apple popularized back with the original iBook. The setup of it was a giant pain in the ass. It was just just a mess of configuration and confusing terms that the average person couldn't deal with. But it looks like, from what I'm reading online, the Google Wi-Fi app does a great job of walking you through it as a very simple process.
There was literally nothing for me to do.
Yeah.
Now that is something that I read that the geeks hated, because there's no real way to get into it.
Exactly.
And,
right.
Do funky things. Yeah. Well, I don't need to do funky things. I just want it to work wherever I am.
Yeah.
So it asks, when you set up the first one, it says, connecting. After you scan the QR code, it says connecting. Then it says setting it up. And then it asks you for a name for the network. So you name the network and put in a password. And that is the last of the input that I had with it.
Wow.
It set it all up, restarted it, downloaded the latest software, installed it, and then said, do you want to install another one? I said, yes. It said, okay, let's go. And then it said, scan the QR code. So, with the picture, scan the QR code. Mm-hmm. And it set that one. That I never had any more interaction with that one. It connected to that network, and I couldn't set up the third one at that point. So I said, no, I'm done right now. I went and did some writing, and then later on, I went in and I just in the app and said, set up another Wi-Fi point. So I plugged it in, scanned the QR code, and it said, do you want to create a new network, or do you want to connect to this one that I had already named? And I said, connect to that one, and it did everything for me. That's it. That was the setup.
I take it back. On Amazon.ca, it's almost $500.
Well, I can't help that you live in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous pricing. I assume we're going to read a report on the Loop, loopinsight.com, about this.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah. I'm gonna write something up. But it's for the first day, it's It's pretty amazing.
Looking forward to reading about it. Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Folks, we talked to Jim Dalrymple, The Loop at loopinsight.com. He's here each and every week. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk next week. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
I didn't realize, because while I'm knowledgeable about some things, for the most part, this whole mesh network stuff doesn't thrill me to the idea of trying it. And like I said, I had read a lot about how why is that so bright and shiny? Need to get a reflector right there. Why is that bouncing up there like that? My face is so shiny. But at that price point here in Canada, $500 basically for 3 access points. I can't afford that. There's no way I'm doing that. The Canadian dollar has not recovered much. No, it has not. At least not on Amazon.com. It's one of the reasons why we rant. Well, and yet, one URL I go to has them at $266 for a pack of 3. Come on, Google or Amazon. So annoying. But has anyone else got any experience with mesh networks, positive or negative? Send me emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. I'd love to hear what you guys think about those things. Tonight, in our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about. Last week, we talked about what happened. Last week has been my audio came back. Last week on the starting point photography segment, I talked about things that you see that your camera can't. The biggest example was the optical illusion of the moon being really, really big in the night sky, but you take a picture of it and it's a little tiny moon. And that's because of the optical illusion that we see. But there's also a whole bunch of stuff that we can't see, but our camera can see. Because remember, your eyes can't slow your shutter speed down. Your eyes can't see in black and white. Your eyes can't keep the shutter open for 30 seconds. What I mean by that are some of these examples. There's a great shot. And again, you folks who are in the Google Hangouts won't be able to see this, unfortunately. There's this great shot that someone took at the Joshua Tree National Park. And it's obviously a nighttime shot. And I'll try to paint a picture with words for you folks in the Google Hangouts. And basically, it's just looking up at the night sky. And, by the way, if you've never had a chance to do this, do it. It's one of the most amazing things you'll ever see. Go somewhere away from city lights. If you're a city kid like me, this will be one of the most awe-inspiring things you've ever done. I still remember the very, very first time I ever walked outside and actually saw the Milky Way. I've been a city kid up until the time I was 14. I moved to my dad's farm in Nova Scotia. And I went to a basketball game. And I got dropped off at the end of our driveway, our road, by the kids had dropped me off. And I'm walking down the driveway. And the driveway wasn't a driveway, it was a road. It was like a quarter mile long. And I'm looking down, and I realized I can see really clearly that it's not actually dark. And I realized there's no streetlights out here like there are in the city. And I looked up, and I could not believe it. I was seeing starlight for the first time in my life. There's actually some moonlight there too. But I looked up, and I could see the band of the Milky Way over top me. It literally stopped me in my tracks. And I just stood there, probably for a good 15, 20 minutes, just staring up at the night sky. I could see literally millions and millions of stars. When you live in the city, you might see 100 of the very, very, very brightest stars. But when you get away from city lights, It was a revelation to me. Next day at school, I went to the library and got a book on astronomy and wanted to find. I got one of those star charts that you laid down in the grass and you held up and you found out what stars were there. So anyway, if you go to one of these places and bring your camera, if you just look up, you'll see a bunch of stars. And if you take the time to let your eyes adjust to the darkness, you'll start seeing more and more and more stars. But if you take your camera and open the shutter, leave the shutter open for, say, 20 seconds, just on a tripod or even the ground, point your camera up, push the shutter button, the shutter's going to stay open for 20 seconds. You're going to see the number of stars be incredibly more than you see with your naked eye. Because when you open the shutter up for that length of time, the camera sensor gathers so much more light. It just sucks in. Even if it's very, very faint light, you're giving that light enough time to imprint itself on the sensor of your camera. So you'll see things in that photograph that you wouldn't have seen with your naked eye. And then if you go ahead and leave the shutter open for a longer period of time, say a minute, 2 minutes, you'll see this wonderful star trail. We don't notice it because the time scale that we as human beings work on is different from the time scale of the stars. The stars are moving all the time, but they're moving so slowly, we don't notice them. We're not out there for enough time. We're not looking at the stars for enough time. There's no frame of reference to see the stars moving. But if you take your camera out at night, open the shutter up for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you'll get these incredible images of the stars moving in a circle around. Now, 5-10 minutes, you'll see a little arc of stars. But photographs like this, these star trail photos, this is when the shutter's left open for an hour, 2 hours, longer. And your camera takes these amazing pictures of the stars circling, from our point of view, circling the North Star. It's an incredible image, but it's an image you can't see with your naked eye. It's an image where the camera captures the image better than your eyes ever could. Another example is waterfall pictures. We've all seen these beautiful pictures of silky waterfalls where the shutter has been, again, left open long enough that the image of the water blurs into basically one mass. And the beautiful part about these kinds of shots, they're easy to do, is that everything that's not moving stays in focus. Everything that's moving gets blurry. So this can create an image that you cannot see with your naked eye, because your naked eye simply cannot do that. Your eyes aren't equipped to be able to create this kind of image. So these are images that are only going to ever be seen in a camera. And again, silky waterfall shots are easy to do. They're a little cliched, but they're fun. They're fun to mess around with the shutter speed. You're not going to do a long shutter speed. 1 second, 2 seconds is probably good enough for the vast majority of waterfall photos. And the other thing is, you don't need to go out in the woods to do this. If you're a city kid, again, like me, most cities have all kinds of waterfalls of varying kinds, just water fountains somewhere in your city. Find those and shoot those. Pick a overcast kind of day or late evening before the sun, just shortly after the sun sets. Put your camera on a tripod and just shoot for 2 seconds or 3 seconds and see what kind of images pop up for you. We're talking about long shutter speeds. You can also do short shutter speeds and capture images that the naked eye can't see. So the classic example is water droplets. We don't actually see any kind of real clarity when we see water droplets. You can throw a rock into the water and you can see the water droplets, but It happens so quickly, it really doesn't really imprint itself as an image on your brain. But with a camera, you can get these very interesting frozen motion shots. Remember, if you want to freeze something, use a short shutter speed. If you want to blur something, use a long shutter speed. So in these kinds of shots where there's a bird dipping its head into the water, or those kinds of things where you want to get the water droplets, you want a very, very, very fast shutter speed. Now, with fast shutter speeds, you need more light. You can't do a fast shutter speed at night, for example. So you can't shoot at 1/4000th of a second and get a Milky Way shot. The shutter just isn't open long enough to capture the light. So if you want to shoot fast shutter speeds, you got to do it in conditions where it's very, very, with a lot of light. Sunny days, primarily. But this kind of shot of a bird fishing is generally an easy shot to get. You got to be patient, and you have to have your timing right. But if you've got a lot of sunshine, set your shutter speed to 1/2000th of a second or 1/4000th of a second, and anticipate when the bird's going to move. The other thing you want to do is put your camera on burst mode to be able to capture these images. But this is the kind of image that, again, you can't capture all by yourself. It's just not possible to. This is the kind of image that you can't see with the naked eye. I'm just looking at shots that Wayne has posted. And this is a spectacular image, Wayne. Wayne, he calls it the auroral crown. I don't think you shot this, Wayne, did you? But here's an example of that idea of keeping the shutter open for long periods of time. Now, the other key about this one is I bet either the photographer did this on a completely windless night or did a dual exposure shot the trees and then shot the aurora borealis. I think that's the way that shot would have done, because if you'd done a long, say, 30-second exposure shot on this, the trees would be blurry because the wind would have moved them around. But it's a beautiful shot. One of the shots of MacMan posted another great picture of the ISS, the International Space Station. Now, MacMan, did you know this was coming? Did you know that shot was going to happen in that way? He said, yeah. So he says, the ISS one turned out to be an amazing accident. I didn't see the Big Dipper until I looked at the picture a few days later. So this is the kind of shot where you know the thing is going to happen, and you're set up for it ahead of time. And I'd be willing to bet that if I looked, so he shot with a Nikon D50, my first camera, nice shot, taken, wow, this was taken 8 years ago, MacMan, f3.5, 30-second exposure, that's perfect for that shot, great shot, nice shot. MacMan says, this is probably one of the worst quality pics I've ever taken, but one I love. And this is just, it's not great quality, but it's obviously it's Saturn. It's a neat shot of the rings of Saturn. But again, it's something you can't see with your naked eye. You need help seeing these kinds of images. The other thing that you need help seeing that you can't see with the naked eye that we don't often think about is depth of field. When you look at anything, your eyes automatically focus on the thing in the center of your vision. You don't really see the things in the periphery of your vision as being out of focus. So for a shot like this shot of, I guess, dandelions or flowers or whatever it might be, if you were there in that spot, you wouldn't see the flowers in the background, the greenery, the petals in the background is being out of focus. You really can only see this to this depth and degree by using a camera. We say all the time that, or you've all heard the cliche, the camera never lies. Well, it does. Cameras lie all the time. But our eyes lie to us, too. That's what we call optical illusions. That's our eyes lying to us. So keep these kinds of shots in mind as images that you can't see, but your camera can. And finally, black and white. We don't see in black and white. It's not a way we look at our world. We always see color. Matter of fact, the human eye is attracted to color. So that's one of the reasons why I think black and white is so compelling to us, is because we don't see it. We know what this beach looks like. We've been to this beach. We've seen those trees. We know what color that water is going to be. We know what color the rocks are. And yet, this very familiar image is completely unfamiliar to us in a way that's hopefully very interesting. So keep this kind of stuff in mind. Keep in when you're out shooting next. Think about shooting pictures that you can't see, creating images that can only happen in your camera. The easiest one to do is black and white, followed by waterfall shots. Those are the two easy ones. If you want to play around with taking images that you can't see, try those two out. As always, if you have any questions about photography, I'm more than happy to ask you and to help you guys figure this stuff out. We had someone last week asking questions about mirrorless cameras. Which one should they buy? And I'm more than happy to help folks out, help folks try to figure this stuff out. I'm reminded by our good friend Monty that I won't be here at Christmas time. Aw. December 8th to 28th, I will be in Australia, going to Newcastle and Sydney with the lovely Melissa. So what that means is there'll be two shows that we'll miss, December 13th and December 20th. There will not be shows. And the 27th. Sorry, there's three shows. That was Melissa who just walked through. What you doing? Getting stuff? You want to say hi? Well, then don't walk through the shot half naked. She's wearing her yoga gear, folks. For those of you who could see her and were wondering why this half naked woman was walking through. That's three shows: the 13th, the 20th, and 27th. Now I'm going to attempt to do something, possibly on the 20th, a Christmas show on the 20th, but it'll all be pre-recorded. There's no point in me trying to do a live show because of the time difference and that kind of stuff. But what Monty wanted me to remind you guys, get your cards and letters to Santa Shawn in early. I've been doing this the last few years, and I really, really enjoy it. Send your Christmas greetings and your New Year's greetings to the YML audience. All you got to do is just shoot a video of yourself saying who you are, where you live, and Merry Christmas. Beyond that, it's up to you. Embellish, shoot with Santa, shoot with your kids. Have your kids do it. We've had people who actually have their kids do the YML Christmas message. Whatever you like, do that. Send us YML Christmas messages. What I'll do is I'll merge them all together into a video, and we'll post that video for other YML listeners to. And the cool thing is we get to see your face. We get to hear your voice. You don't have to use your face, but your name, where you live, and your Mac Life Christmas greeting. Thanks very much, Monty, for reminding me about that. I appreciate that. Let's see, we got questions on this week's show. Our friend Don Beck in Martha's Vineyards says, recently on YML, you and Jim were discussing why Apple no longer minds if you top off the charge on your batteries. I suspected at the time, but just looked up to be sure the difference is that equipment used to use NiCad batteries that did have a limited number of charging cycles, but now they use lithium-ion batteries, and those do not have the same limitations. Lithium-ion batteries also have some other advantages. They're lighter, they hold a charge much longer when sitting on the shelf, not being used, and they're less hazardous when disposed of. Their main disadvantage is that they are more expensive. Don, thank you very much for that. Scott Randall says, first, let me say that Melissa is a really sweet and down-to-earth lady. And yes, cute too. I'm really happy for you. Thanks very much, Scott. I'll try to limit what I say in this email. You and Jim are mistaken about the charging procedure for iOS devices and laptops, for that matter. The iPhone battery is good for 1,000 charge cycles at 80% and 500 charge cycles at 100%. That said, I've not seen an iOS device battery become unusable, even an iOS device is 4 or 5 years old. The myth that you have to run your battery to zero is completely incorrect. As a person who studied and taught both chemistry and physics, it does not hold with scientific fact. I did lessons on how batteries work. Now, as far as Jim and this is what I was taught, I don't think he was remembering correctly. The old NiCad and NIMH, was that nickel magnesium, I think? Batteries did drain very quickly, and you could run them to zero with no harm. But the new lithium-ion batteries last much longer, and you should never run them to zero. That could kill the battery. Apple has a link to it in an article that has the concerns of what he is saying. It makes it clear you should charge your device when it's about 40% charged. In fact, I've read many places that your battery will stay good longer if you never let it go below 50%. Of course, you can't always do this, but do the best you can. He also makes it clear that the best practice is to charge your device overnight. Thanks very much, Scott. Scott, I'll get to the rest of your pieces next week. Nickel metal hydride. Thanks, Monty and MacMan. Nickel metal hydride. Lauren Finkelstein says, you read an email from Scott Thrift that with Watch OS 4, he could no longer use his watch to control music playback on the iPhone. I don't know about initiating, but when my iPhone is playing something, be it music or a podcast, I can most definitely control playback using the Now Playing app. Pause, next track, previous track, those all work. Not sure what's not working for Scott, but it may be a bug affecting him rather than a removal of functionality by Apple. Patrick Davidson says, long-time archive listener, want to try to catch the show live next week, but have no idea what time you start. Couldn't easily find it on the site, so I thought I'd ask. I know, Patrick, this was last week's question, but I guess I've been doing it for so long, I keep forgetting to tell folks. The show generally officially starts at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. I start the pre-show officially at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I generally start it up about a half hour before then. So around 4:30, I'll have all the gear set up, and you're more than welcome to join us in the IRC chat room or the Google Hangout to just chat an hour or 30 minutes before the show. It was funny. We did that back in the days of Real Audio. Going back in the mist of time. At the beginning of the podcast era, Real Audio was pretty much the only way you could stream a live show. But Real Audio charged you for more than 60 concurrent streams. And at the very beginning, Adam, who was the co-host at that time, and I never had to worry. We were getting 60 people. We didn't even imagine. If we had 2 people listening, we were happy. So we didn't worry about that. And then we got a little popular. Then we got mentioned in Mac Addict magazine and Mac Home magazine, and people started to learn about the show. And we quickly reached that 60-person limit. So we went to Real Audio and said, how much does it cost to get 1,000-person limit? And Real Audio said, it will cost you like $5,000. Like, dude, we haven't got that kind of money. We're not spending that kind of money. So what we did was we started the broadcast earlier so folks could join earlier and sort of grab their seat. Imagine it's a limited seat auditorium. So we opened the doors a little early so folks could come early and basically grab a seat. So that's why we started that. So I started the pre-show doing that. MacMan says, I can't remember what you were using when I started listening back in 2000. When did QuickTime 4 come out? So I'm going to do a quick Google search or Wikipedia search when QuickTime 4 came out. Because QuickTime 4 was the very first version of QuickTime that allowed streaming. and we actually had Apple. Uh, digressing, but it's kind of a funny story. The Friday date release June 8th, 1999. Okay, so Okay, Wayne, what day was June 8th, 1999? My brain says it was a Monday. Can someone find out what day of the week June 8th, 1999 was? See if I remember the story correctly. I want to say it was a Monday. A Tuesday. That's even better. So on the Friday before that Tuesday, so the 4th, I get a phone call. Hi, this is so-and-so from Apple. Oh, wow. Hi, how you doing? I'm the director of QuickTime at Apple. Wow, that's really cool. He said, we want you to do your show in streaming QuickTime. I said, that's not possible. The QuickTime doesn't stream. He said, well, this is a secret. I'm telling you, and you can't tell anybody else, that on Tuesday, we're going to announce QuickTime 4 and its ability to do streaming. Wow, that's fantastic. What am I going to need to do that? Well, you'll need a QuickTime streaming server. Okay, what is that? And at the time, it was a G3 running Mac OS server, and then on top of that, running QuickTime streaming server. So I said the word server there twice, and both times that scared the crap out of me, because I don't know diddly about server. And for you oldsters, you'll remember Mac OS server was a nightmare. It was server software. It wasn't the Mac that we know and love. It was Unix geek stuff. I couldn't run it. So I said, oh, okay, how much is that going to cost? He said $5,000. Well, sorry, dude. There's no way I'm paying $5,000 to test to run my show on your stuff. The following Thursday, so they announce QuickTime streaming server on Tuesday. We do the show on Wednesday, and we say, hey, Apple's announced this new cool stuff. We can't use it, so don't bug us about it. It's not going to happen. It's going to cost $5,000. We ain't got the money. On Thursday, I get a phone call from UPS in Canada. Are you Mr. King? Yes, I am. We have a package here for you. Okay, deliver it. We can't. Why not? Because it's in customs jail out of the airport. What do you mean customs jail? Well, Apple has sent you something worth $5,000. What? Apple in Cupertino sent you something worth $5,000. Okay. How much is the customs duty? $500. I ain't got $500. So the following Wednesday, I say this in the show. Apple has kindly sent us a QuickTime streaming server, but it's in customs jail because customs wants $500. I ain't got $500. The next day, I get an email from one of our listeners, Jeff LaGrua. And Jeff says, send me your address. I'll send you the $500. I'm like, what? Yeah, I'll send you $500. I want you to use QuickTime streaming server. Dude, that's fantastic. Thank you. He sent me $500. I go and get the machine out of customs jail. I bring it home. I plug it in, and it's server software. You got to configure everything. And I didn't know shit about configuring Mac OS server. I didn't know shit about QuickTime streaming server. No clue. So the next show, I said to the audience, got it out of custom jail, thanks to the wonderful Jeff LaGrua, but I can't set it up. I don't know how to set this stuff up. Thursday, I get an email from someone who says, well, I can do it for you. Really? Yes. Come on down. I'll buy you a beer. So he came down, and I can't remember the guy's name. My apologies. I don't remember the guy's name. But he was like an Uber nerd out at UBC, and he set it all up for us. And we've been running QuickTime streaming stuff, variations there ever since. So that's how we got to. That's how we started doing the pre-show stuff. I don't know why I got on a little MacMan said the original OS 10 server had the OS 9 GUI still. Was that? I don't think it was running OS 10, though. Was it? I'm not sure. It did. Okay, so the original OS 10 server, and now you use a competitor's 2 services to stream your show. Exactly, because Apple has, for at least the last 5 years, if not 10, completely ignored QuickTime. At that point, Apple owned the video market. They had encouraged many, many companies, ourselves included, to build their businesses on the back of QuickTime. Your Mac Life was the first show to ever use QuickTime streaming server. Was the first one to ever use video. QuickTime Video was the first one to ever use Video iChat. First time to use Apple Broadcaster. Not many people know Apple used to have their own broadcaster app. All this stuff was fed to us by Apple. Hey, keep using this. Keep using this. Great, fan. We love your stuff. Keep using this stuff. And Apple kept sending us updated and new software and all kinds of cool stuff. But after a while, they just sort of seemed to have lost interest in it. And it kept getting pushed further and further back in the OS. It sort of became part of the OS. But they really haven't done much with it in years. And so, yeah, we're now using other people's stuff because Apple didn't keep up. Apple let that market fall to the wayside, and other folks stepped in. So, anyway, that's it. That's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for being here, telling us about Google Mesh. If you have your own Google Mesh story or more information about Google Mesh, I'm very interested in it because I'd love to try it. Can't afford it, but I'd love to read more about it. Send your experiences to me at Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. To you folks who are tuned in live or listening into the archive, as always, I thank you very much for joining us here on Wednesday evening or whatever you choose to listen to the show. And don't forget, send in your Christmas greetings. Do it in October. Do it in November. Do it before I go to Australia. Just send me just a video of yourself or your wife or your kids or your husband or whatever. Give us your name, where you live, and some sort of seasonal greeting. Happy Hanukkah, Fabulous Festus, Cool Kwanzaa, whatever you want to do. Send those emails to me at Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. Folks, until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!